Life Audio.
What do you do if you are always giving in to other people's demands? If perhaps you say yes so often when you mean no, that you don't even know who you are or what you like anymore? Today, we're going to tackle this subject from a Christian perspective. I'm Heather Creekmore. You're listening to the Compared to podcast. If you're brand new here, we're so glad you're here. I'm talking to my friend Joyce Campbell. We're talking about subjugation, which is the clinical word for people pleasing. And friend, today we're going to tell you what to do if you've been people pleasing and want to stop. If you've been subjugated, if you've been saying yes when you mean to say no, how can you start giving your best yes instead of every yes? You're going to love where we go today. Thanks for listening. Let's get right to it. Welcome to Compared to Who, the podcast to help you make peace with your body so you can savor God's rest and feel his love. If you're tired of fighting body image the world's way, Compared to Who is the show for you. You've likely heard lots of talk about loving your body, but my goal is different. Striving to fall in love with stretch marks and cellulite is a little silly to me. Instead, I want to encourage you and remind you with the truth of Scripture that you are seen, you are known, and you are loved no matter what your size or shape. Here, the pressure is off. If you're looking for real talk, biblical encouragement, and regular reminders that God loves you and you're not alone, you've come to the right place. I hope you enjoy today's show, and hey, tell a friend about it. Joyce Campbell, thanks so much for coming back and joining us today.
My pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
So last time you were on the show, we talked a little bit about all the different problems, subjugation, people pleasing, always saying yes when we mean no can cause, from physical problems to just exploding with anger when we can't take it anymore, all of those things. So if you haven't listened to that episode yet, go back and listen to that one first. But today, I'm going to kind of turn the corner. I feel like, and let me just I'll start with this story. It might be a little embarrassing for me to share this, but my listeners know that I don't mind going there. But this summer, we finally did vacation the way that I've wanted to do vacation. And it was a wonderful vacation. And it wasn't the fault of my husband that we hadn't done it this way. It was my own wrestling with some subjugation issues with family of origin. I'll just say it that generically. Mm-hmm. And, I've told Eric, my husband, I don't know, probably 7 times since we've been back, about 2 months, like, that was the best vacation of my life. Like, I needed to be doing that for the last 17 years. like, what would my life look like if I had vacationed like that for the last 17 years? And Joyce, it's kind of embarrassing, but this is a situation where I have felt like I couldn't say no. I had to do it the way it was expected of me. It had to be a certain way. And it felt very scary when I announced how we were going to be doing it. I think my blood pressure was way high. It was so high for like the week I was thinking about doing it. And then I finally did it. It started to come down just a little bit. It was like, this is having a toll on me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting how so many of us do just fall into the pattern of saying yes and being agreeable because it's really scary and hard.
Absolutely.
To think about not doing that. Mm-hmm. Right. And go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say it might be similar what Tom and I have done or did over quite a few years. And that was always going to one or the other family of origin. Mm-hmm. And it was imposed by us. It wasn't imposed by the families. And there was this thought of, which is, has value. We don't know how long they'll be with us.
Right.
So we need to do that. But over time, I wound up in the same place. Mm-hmm. And now that our children are adults, it was so hard, but they have been to different countries during Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew from all the experience being with other people, with clients, that I had to be willing and to freely give.
Yeah.
So it took some prayer, and there was that lurch in my stomach when I first heard about it. But our kids are not responsible for our well-being, and we do have friends. And so we spent some good time with friends during those times. But it is hard to change our mindset, and yet it's so freeing to choose to do that. It may take prayer, it may take just a lot of talk with our spouse, maybe some counseling in there, but it's so wonderful to be able to let them go and bless them in their choices.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you have that perspective. You have the parent perspective as well as the child perspective on that one. Mine aren't old enough to really spend holidays on their own yet, but that's coming very soon. So, yeah. Well, for the women or the woman listening today, it was like, yeah. I hear you saying that I don't have to always, be agreeable. I hear you saying that I can kind of step out from under this, but like practically, like where does she start with that? Because it's not just that first conversation of like, no, I'm not going to do this. I think there's work that needs to be done first.
Oh, absolutely. And in my book, there are numerous case studies that you'll be able to learn from. And yes, and it depends on the situation. If you're going to be working on not subjugating in the workplace, for example, we often, my clients and I will do role playing. I might be the boss, and we'll come up with different statements or questions that they can pull from their backpack, so to speak, and that are appropriate and safe for both parties. So that's really helpful for anyone. And then if it has to do with family relations, I often suggest that they actually speak to whomever is involved and say, I have had a real wake up call here. And I realized I didn't even know the word, but I have been subjugating all my life. And it's taken a toll on me. I'm really angry about it. I resent giving in and giving up to so many people. And so I'm going to go about changing this. I want to go through a metamorphosis here. And so if I happen to say no about something, for example, if you ask me, would you like to go to X titled whatever movie? I might say, well, I don't really think so this time. And it's true, they might be upset because we've always complied. But to know that you are able to have your own opinions and preferences. And so again, you can tell the family or this family member, I really hope that you'll be patient with me and understand what I'm about in this matter. And so I'm open to questions anytime. And if you need to talk with me about something that I've said no to, I'm more than happy to do that. And so then you've paved the way that they aren't going to be blindsided. with your no. But we do have to be really careful because there usually is a reactive stage
Mhm.
where when you've learned that you can say no,
Mhm.
you may start saying no to everything.
Yeah.
And that's good. We should applaud it in a way because you're coming out of this. And at the same time, we want the pendulum to swing back into balance
Uh-huh.
where you're not abusing it. And I remember one client, we were working on coming out of subjugation, and um, she, well, her husband asked her if he could come into a session.
Mm.
And she said, well, sure. And so he did.
Mm.
And she didn't really, she was confused because she didn't know why he would want to be there.
Mm.
And so he started by saying something like, well, I'm really happy that Jane is coming out of this situation. At the same time, I feel like I'm being shut down right and left. And I had already told Jane about the reactive stage,
Mm.
but evidently she either forgot about it or just wasn't aware that she was saying no so
Yeah.
often. And so he was really pleased that he came after we talked through it. And I reminded Jane about the stage. And she didn't even
Mhm.
realize she was doing it, but she was abusing her no.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
so it worked out great. They both knew and understood. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I get that. I get that. I mean, I can't really pinpoint it, but I know within the last decade for sure, saying no to some things
mhm,
or, turning
mhm.
down opportunities that at one point I would have, thought I had to say yes
Right,
to. I mean,
right.
when you have been controlled for a long time,
Mhm.
I think there's a little buzz, like a little
Absolutely.
high, like, ooh, that felt good. Like, and
Right.
then I don't know, do you turn into a toddler where it's like, no, no, no?
That's the reactive stage.
Right. Right. I may have
Yeah.
walked through that.
And I do go into in the book how to go about it.
Mhm.
You don't just automatically start saying no. You do it in a kind, respectful way. And you don't always have to give your reason. That's for sure.
Mhm.
But if you want to, you can say,
Yeah.
well, that just won't work for me. You don't have to go in this huge, long explanation like I used to.
Yeah, I think we need to stay there for just a second, Joyce, because I know my people are over explainers. I mean,
Okay.
the former pastor's wife of our church, I don't know if do you know Cindy?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, Cindy is the master of, I'm sorry, that just won't work for me. I mean, she does that. She
Good
has
for
taught me
her.
so much, but I'm the one that's like, oh no, well, we have something that day. And then I get asked for another day and it's, oh, we have something. And then like by the third or fourth time, it's like, I'm out of excuses. And
Yeah,
so it, it is, that's part of this, right? It's
absolutely.
feeling like it is enough for me to say, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Mhm,
Period. End of
mhm,
sentence.
mhm.
What have you seen? Fill that a little bit more. Why won't we just do that? What are we afraid of?
Well, again, abandonment, rejection, retaliation.
Mm.
Um, because some people do have that air of retaliation.
Mm.
Well, if you don't do this for me, there's going to be payback.
Mm.
Well, in that case, they may not be a friend at all.
Mm.
And at some point, there may have to be a going of separate ways.
Mm.
Because, well, I remember when I was asked to be on a certain committee to organize a retreat, and I was a vice chairman. And the chairman, I didn't know really well, but I knew her a bit. And I was actually, this is a long time ago, but I was afraid to tell her that on we were going to meet on a Wednesday, I think, in the evening. And I needed to tell her that I couldn't be there a specific Wednesday because it was my mother-in-law's birthday and we had always planned to take her out to dinner. But I got the courage to speak up. And she said, "Oh, no problem. That'll be just fine. I'll fill you in and blah, blah, blah." Well, I got to know her so much better, and she respects the word no and is very big on boundaries. So she was a very kind person that I happened to have that situation to deal with. But again, we're not responsible for their reaction. And if it is a reaction rather than a response, very often there's no reasoning with the person. And so sometimes we do have to burn bridges, and that's okay because they were not concerned about your well-being, your health, your mental health, your emotional health, physical health. They just wanted you to be compliant, give in and give up all the time, period.
You have a couple stories in your book about marriages. So marriage, a little different in terms of just, you're not going to be my friend anymore after having been subjugated to you.
Right.
Like, how do you counsel? I mean, in my case, my audience is women. How do you counsel the woman who is maybe listening to this and like, whoa, I've been just the compliant wife for decades. Where does she start?
Well, first of all, she needs to learn more about subjugation. So she really has an understanding of it and what it's doing to her emotionally, physically, mentally. And then again, we would deal with the unique situations that she feels or knows that she's subjugating in. And we would come up with conversations, ways to approach a conversation. And again, if the spouse is not willing, willingness is the key. If they're not willing to truly listen and hear, then they have no respect for the wife. And the doormat syndrome is in place. And so I suggest one of the first things is to ask the spouse, are you willing to come to counseling with me? And if they are, if he is, then fantastic. And then things can be worked through. Perhaps he doesn't even realize that this is the case. He might not even know. He may just think, oh, she's so easygoing. That's no problem. But there are cases in the book where it's revealed that there is no other option but to separate. And often when separation occurs, the spouse wakes up. Oh, this is a serious issue. Maybe I should consider going to counseling with her. And if he doesn't, and she's suffering, then divorce may have to be, because it's abuse. It's actually a horrible abuse. And that's not okay. And I hate that. I don't like divorce at all. And I'm absolutely for working through whatever needs to be worked through to restore that marriage.
So is there a scale? Like, I'm just a little controlled to like fully, like, is there, because I don't want someone to be like, oh, my husband got mad when I said no last night. That means I'm subjugated. That, like I think we probably do tend to, go
Right.
black or white on some of these things,
True.
right? Like what does
Well,
it?
and there is a little survey, we can call it, in the book that lists
Okay,
a number of symptoms.
that's right.
And I believe I say that if you have 10 out of this many in the survey, then most likely you are subjugating. But that's a good way to start out. And also to ask a friend, a good friend that is trustworthy and is interested in your well-being, because they may have observed, and say, oh my goodness, I am so glad that your eyes are opening.
Yeah.
This is not okay.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, so I want to just kind of loop back as we close up today. So when we transition from saying yes to saying no, how do we feel safe doing that? Because isn't that like even in our brains, right? We're so used to being in the limbic system, fight or flight. I know I have to, say this because that's the only way I'm safe. How do we feel safe?
Well, first of all, if we've explained to the person or persons, um, then they again will not be blindsided. And we need to say no in a very kind and respectful way. It's not this no, I won't do it.
Yeah.
It's to be very respectful and bathed in prayer and then submitted. That's one way that we submit as wives, by speaking the truth about subjugation. Is that if we say yes when we really mean no, we are lying.
Yeah.
And that's not acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was also thinking, like, it's very difficult to have an identity. Even an identity, like as Christians, our identity should be in Christ, right? But
Right.
it's very difficult to know who you are
Yes.
if you're always just compliant, if you're
That's
always
right.
people pleasing. I mean,
That's right.
I don't know if you remember this movie. It's an old movie. What's it called? Runaway Bride. Do you remember that
Oh,
movie with Julia
vaguely.
Roberts? And there's a part of this movie, I think I might have even mentioned on the podcast before because it just stuck out to me. There's a part of this movie where she's with 3 different men that she almost marries in this movie, but she runs away from each. And
Right.
Richard Gere comes in and interviews these men she almost married because he's writing a story about it. And he asks each of these men how she liked her eggs cooked.
Okay.
And each man says, oh, she likes them over easy, just like me. She likes them scrambled, just like me. Right. And so you can see that her problem is she becomes like whomever she is with. And then ultimately she runs away because she can't marry that person because she's not actually herself. Right.
Right.
But developing a strong identity. I mean, you've walked with, lots of clients through this. Like, is there a place to start even on that front with figuring out who you are?
Well, that's a good point, because when you do walk in chronic subjugation, you don't know who you are, because you don't know what your true opinion is on any given thing. You don't know what your preferences are. Oh, I just go along with a group because it's easier that way and everybody loves me. So it's, you're safe because, one, you've been validated by a professional if you read the book. And 2, if you're in counseling, you've been validated. And also taught, as we've said, not to go into the reactive stage. And if you are, to get out of it and get back into balance. So if you know you're doing what's right, if you know your thoughts and your speech is congruent, that you're telling the truth, then you have to know that you're safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Safe only in the Lord, right?
You're
Sometimes,
right.
but still
Absolutely.
absolutely safe. That's really good. That's really helpful. Anything we've missed, Joyce? Anything you want to leave the
Well,
listeners
I was
with?
just thinking about the being safe. If you're not safe, then again, it's the other person
Mhm,
that has an issue.
mhm,
I remember long ago, one of my sister-in-laws, Christian, joined a ladies group in her hometown, and it turned out not to be a safe place because she was of the sanguine temperament. She
okay.
was very bubbly and
Mhm,
happy and, just didn't meet a stranger.
mhm,
They did not like that.
mhm,
And they wanted her to become a melancholy, a
mhm,
quiet, subjugated melancholy
mhm,
that was very compliant
mhm,
with their thoughts and
mhm,
preferences.
mhm,
And this was a Christian group. I don't know
yeah.
if I said that or not, but
Mhm,
yeah,
yeah. And so did she stop going to the group? Don't leave us
she
hanging.
did. She did. She did. She found others.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So that's
Absolutely.
good to be aware of. Well, Joyce, thanks so much for being on the show and sharing this topic with us. Your book is called Dare to Say No, Stop Saying Yes When You Really Mean No. I'll hold it up for the YouTube audience. Where can we get a hold of this book?
Well, it's on Amazon. It's available also in all kinds of bookstores. It's available in audio on
Okay,
Amazon,
wonderful,
iTunes, Audible.
wonderful,
So good
wonderful.
number of sources.
And Joyce, if someone, are you still practicing? Or are you retired?
A bit,
Bit,
but
yeah.
my credentials, all my credentials are from Colorado.
Okay.
So
So
I
you're
can,
not seeing clients here then.
no,
Okay.
I could consult, but
Okay. Okay. Great. Well, and your website is joycelcampbell.com.
yes,
And
and
a link.
people can ask questions through that too.
Okay.
So,
Great. Great. I'll
yeah,
put that link in the show notes. Well, Joyce,
right.
thanks so much for being on the podcast
Thank you,
today.
Heather. I really enjoyed being with you.
And thank you for watching or listening today. I hope something today has helped you stop comparing and start living. Bye bye.